So, I want you to picture a muggy summer afternoon in the Midwest.
Oh, yeah.
It's Sunday, July 22nd, 2001, in Richmond, Indiana. You can practically feel that heavy, humid air just pressing down on you.
Absolutely. Stifling.
Right. And a young mother, a bride-to-be named Marilyn McCown, everyone calls her Niqui, is running a completely mundane weekend errand. She's wearing a casual pink top, biker shorts, and she's just doing laundry.
Just a normal Sunday.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Imagine the rhythmic, hypnotic hum of the washing machines at the Richmond Coin Laundry. It's an ordinary day until there's a sudden unsettling shift in the atmosphere. A group of men in the laundromat start harassing her.
Well, terrified.
They will not leave her alone. She's creeped out, obviously, so she leaves her clothes mid-wash and retreats to her mother's house, which is just a short drive away.
Which makes total sense. Get out of there.
Right. And her mom, seeing how rattled she is, offers to let Niqui finish washing the clothes right there at her place. But Niqui declines. She drives back to the Richmond Coin Laundry and she vanishes into thin air.
It is honestly the ultimate nightmare scenario. I mean, one minute you are checking off a weekend chore, and the next you are the center of a quarter-century-old mystery.
Yeah, and that's exactly what today's deep dive is about. We are taking you straight into the heart of that mystery. We're looking at a massive stack of source materials today. Investigative files, heavily redacted case reports, witness interviews.
A lot of material. And it maps out a truly baffling timeline.
It really does. Our mission today is to guide you through this tangled web of Niqui McCown's disappearance. We are looking at a cast of suspects where, frankly, absolutely everyone seems to be hiding something.
Right, so we want you to act as the jury today.
Yes, exactly. As we sift through the red herrings and the buried secrets, we want you to weigh the evidence. See if you can untangle the lies.
Because it is startling how easily a normal Sunday can fracture. When investigators look at cases like this, they aren't just, tracing a timeline.
Right.
They are attempting to decipher human behavior in the chaotic, immediate aftermath of a crisis.
Which brings us to the initial police theory in 2001. They leaned heavily on that classic runaway bride trope.
Well, of course they did.
Right. Niqui was just 3 weeks away from her wedding. So investigators looked at her disappearance, noted the impending nuptials, and just made the assumption that she had cold feet.
But her family wasn't buying it.
Not for a second. They pushed back immediately. They insisted she would never, ever abandon her 9-year-old daughter, Peyton, and they were highly suspicious of her fiancé, Bobby Webster.
Well, and statistically speaking, as an investigator, you always focus on the romantic partner first.
Right, the husband or the boyfriend.
Exactly. The grim reality of criminal investigation is that a significant percentage of women who meet foul play are harmed by an intimate partner. So investigators look for deviations in normal grieving behavior.
And Bobby's actions in those first few days were, well, they were remarkably pragmatic.
Very pragmatic.
Within days of Niqui vanishing, he contacted the community college she attended to request a refund on her unused tuition. He went to the jeweler to return her engagement ring.
Wow.
He even canceled their wedding reception venue to get the deposit back.
That's fast.
It is, but, I have to challenge the implication there a bit. We are talking about a working-class couple living paycheck to paycheck.
True.
They were a 2-income household. Suddenly, half of that income is gone. A person can be absolutely terrified about how they are going to keep the lights on and pay the mortgage. Going into financial survival mode doesn't automatically equate to murder.
No, you're right. Panic manifests differently in everyone, and financial self-preservation is actually a known trauma response.
Exactly.
However, if you look at the files, there are darker behavioral anomalies. The police brought Bobby in for a polygraph examination, and according to the investigative reports, he failed a crucial question regarding his knowledge of her disappearance.
Okay, but polygraphs are notoriously tricky, though. They aren't actually lie detectors, are they? They just measure stress.
Yeah, exactly. They measure physiological arousal, specifically changes in heart rate, blood pressure, respiration, and galvanic skin response.
Which is basically how much you sweat, right?
Right, exactly. The machine establishes a baseline, and then the examiner asks target questions. The theory is that deception causes a spike in anxiety, which the machine records.
But couldn't a grieving fiancé also have a spike in anxiety?
Absolutely. And Bobby later disputed his failure, claiming the question was phrased in a way that triggered his guilt for simply not being at the laundromat to protect her.
Which is a totally fair point.
It is. He has a point. A polygraph cannot distinguish between the stress of a guilty conscience for murder and the intense survivor's guilt of a grieving fiancé.
But the witness testimony in these files is much harder to dismiss than a polygraph chart.
Oh, without a doubt.
Years after the disappearance, this woman came forward. She told police she had been at the Richmond Coin Laundry that Sunday to use the payphone. She stated she saw Niqui at the entrance arguing with a man.
And when investigators presented her with a photo lineup,
She pointed directly to photo number 6. It was Bobby Webster.
which completely shatters the timeline Bobby provided to police.
Yeah, it does. His official alibi was that he went to church, went to a mall to get fitted for tuxes, and drove past the laundromat twice, once around 2:15 p.m. and again around 3:30 or 3:45 p.m.
But he claimed he noted her car was gone the second time. He never once mentioned stopping and arguing with her.
Never. And the anecdotal evidence from the people closest to him is incredibly unsettling, too. There is this detailed account in the files from a woman named Kim, a childhood friend of Bobby's.
Right. The story about the rings.
Yes. Kim reported that mere days after Niqui vanished, Bobby showed up at her door wearing Niqui's wedding bands around his neck on a chain. And Kim had just seen Niqui wearing those exact rings at church the very morning she disappeared.
That is so eerie.
When she questioned Bobby about them, he gave contradictory stories. First, he claimed Niqui took them off because they were too loose. Then, in a later conversation, he claimed she took them off because she had gained weight and they were too tight.
See, the psychological indicators in Kim's account point to someone attempting to control the narrative of the relationship posthumously. Bobby started referring to Niqui as an angel very early in the timeline.
Way too early.
Right, speaking about her in the past tense, while search and rescue teams were still operating under the assumption she might be alive. And when Kim finally asked Bobby point blank if he killed Niqui, his reaction was highly anomalous.
He didn't deny it. He didn't mount a defense. According to Kim, he just stood there and broke down crying.
Silence in the face of an accusation like that is heavy. It isn't a legal confession, obviously, but behaviorally, investigators view it as a massive red flag.
Right, because innocent people typically react to murder accusations with outrage or vehement denial, not passive weeping.
Exactly.
So fast forward to early 2021, and the files document a truly bizarre late-in-life development. Bobby calls Kim out of the blue. They hadn't really maintained a close relationship.
And this was an 8-hour phone call, right?
8 hours. And in it, he completely changes his story about Niqui. He claims she was having an affair and that he had been secretly stalking her.
Wow.
And shortly after making this chaotic, jealousy-fueled confession, Bobby suffered a fatal heart attack.
It just leaves investigators in such a difficult position. Was Bobby a financially panicked fiancé who was unfairly judged? Or a jealous stalker who snapped at the laundromat?
Right. But the physical evidence forced the police to look beyond Bobby and examine the geographic footprint of the case. We have to move the map 45 minutes east to Dayton, Ohio.
Okay, let's go to Dayton.
It's November 3rd, 2001, so 4 months after Niqui disappeared. A sheriff's deputy is patrolling the Meadows of Catalpa apartment complex in Dayton. The deputy spots a 1990 black and gray GMC Jimmy. One of the doors is wide open.
And the scene inside the vehicle is, well, it's eerie, the ignition is damaged, and the stereo is missing.
Which initially suggests a routine auto theft.
Exactly. But in the back seat, investigators find a neatly folded basket of laundry.
She had finished washing her clothes.
She did. Furthermore, the driver's seat is pulled as far forward as the tracks allow, perfectly positioned for a petite driver like Niqui.
Which indicates she might have driven herself to Dayton. And this specific apartment complex is a massive focal point in the files. Niqui used to live there. Her ex-boyfriend still lived there.
But the investigative reports point us towards suspect number 2.
Right. A man who heavily frequented that complex named Tommy Swint.
So, Tommy Swint was a corrections officer who worked alongside Niqui at a Dayton prison. And the witness interviews regarding their dynamic paint a very disturbing picture.
Extremely disturbing.
Some coworkers described him as a protective figure, sure, but others outlined an escalation of classic stalker behavior.
Yeah, the files detail some deeply concerning incidents. Tommy actually sent lingerie to Niqui's bridal shower.
Which is wildly inappropriate.
Completely. And her sister also reported walking in on a situation years earlier where Tommy had Niqui pinned against a chair. She was screaming for help, and Tommy tried to laugh it off as a joke.
See, from a psychological standpoint, pinning someone against a chair isn't a joke. It is a test of physical dominance.
It's terrifying.
It is. It's a boundary-probing behavior common in obsessive individuals. They escalate their physical control to gauge what the victim and the people around them will tolerate.
Oh.
But initially, police couldn't tie Tommy physically to the events at the laundromat, so he faded from the primary investigation.
Until his own arrogance brought him back into the crosshairs. It's like a criminal stepping on a rake in the dark. In 2007, Tommy lands a job as a police officer in Trotwood, Ohio.
Unbelievable.
The Richmond Police Department catches wind of this and contacts Trotwood, informing them, hey, you just hired a person of interest in a missing person case. So Tommy is forced to resign.
And instead of just keeping his head down,
He sues the Richmond TD for defamation.
which is such a massive mistake. That lawsuit generated intense local media coverage. And that exposure prompted an anonymous tip to the Dayton police, urging them to look at Tommy for a completely different cold case.
The 1991 murder of a woman named Tina Marie Ivory.
Right. Advancements in forensic technology allowed the crime lab to test preserved biological material from that 1991 crime scene against Tommy's DNA.
And it was a conclusive match.
It was. They also lifted his fingerprint from the tape used to bind the victim.
So in 2010, law enforcement travels to Alabama, where Tommy had relocated, to execute an arrest warrant for murder. Before they can even breach the door, Tommy shoots himself.
Yeah.
He leaves behind a note explicitly denying responsibility for any deaths.
But a suicide in the face of an arrest warrant is often interpreted as a definitive admission of guilt. The obsessive coworker with a violent hidden past is finally exposed.
It seems like the logical conclusion to Niqui's disappearance, too.
It does. But when you meticulously parse the timeline and the logistics within the case files, the theory of Tommy Swintz acting as a lone wolf begins to fracture.
Because we have a third player in this narrative. Her name is Darlene Williams. She was another coworker at the prison, and she was Tommy Swintz's mistress.
And her presence in the files completely upends the established timeline. For years, the working theory was that Niqui vanished from the laundromat around 3:00 p.m.
But phone records pulled by investigators revealed the last known contact was actually a phone call Niqui made to Darlene between 3:3 and 6:00 p.m. that evening.
Right.
And I want you, the listener, to follow the logic with me here, because there is a logistical puzzle in the files regarding this timeline that is impossible to ignore. It's some serious back-of-the-napkin math.
Oh, the gas math.
Yeah.
This is fascinating.
Yes. So Niqui called Darlene about picking up some hair and nail vitamins. The working theory is that Niqui might have decided to drive the 45 minutes to Dayton to get them. But let's look at the fuel.
Okay.
Think about how far a quarter tank of gas gets you in your own car. Now imagine trying to stretch that in a heavy, gas-guzzling 1990 GMC Jimmy with a 31-gallon tank. Bobby explicitly told police the vehicle only had a quarter of a tank when Niqui left the house.
And the documentation of the vehicle recovery is crucial here. When the GMC Jimmy was found abandoned in Dayton 4 months later, the gauge read half a tank.
Right. To get a 31-gallon tank from a quarter to a half, you are putting in roughly 7 to 8 gallons of fuel. Based on average prices in the summer of 2001, that would cost between $12 and $16.
And Bobby told police he only handed Niqui $10.50 that day.
Exactly. The laundromat machines cost about $6, so she had $4.50 to her name. Where did the fuel come from? Did she have a secret credit card? Or did someone else intercept her, refuel the vehicle, and drive it to Dayton?
It points strongly to the involvement of a second person managing the logistics of the crime scene. We have to look at the alibis for the day after Niqui disappeared, July 23rd. Both Tommy and Darlene called out of work at the prison.
When investigators asked them about this absence, they both claimed they drove down to Richmond to help Niqui's family search for her.
But investigators verified this with Niqui's family. The family stated unequivocally that neither Tommy nor Darlene ever showed up to help search.
Which brings us to a highly cinematic and tense encounter documented in the case files. Detectives began running deep background checks, pulling driving records for Tommy and Darlene. They discovered a speeding ticket Tommy received a few months after Niqui vanished.
And they traced the vehicle he was driving to an auto leasing company address in Dayton.
An address that was located exactly 1 mile away from the meadows of Catalpa Apartments, where Niqui's abandoned GMC was found.
So detectives drove to this address expecting a commercial business, but arrived at a residential home.
Right. They knock on the front door, and large dogs immediately charge at the front window, barking aggressively. The detectives persist. Eventually, a woman cracks the door open just a few inches.
She's defensive, refusing to speak with them, and demanding to know who they are.
So the detectives explain they are working a homicide investigation. She shuts them down completely. They leave a business card and start walking back to their vehicle. Suddenly, the front door opens and she calls them back. When they step inside the house, the atmosphere shifts completely. The dogs are gone. It is dead silent. The house is pitch dark.
It's like something out of a movie.
It really is. The woman retreats into the shadows of her kitchen where they can barely make out her silhouette.
And from the dark, she asks why they are there. They mention Tommy Swint's and the auto leasing company address tied to his speeding ticket. The police report notes a sudden, intense physical reaction.
She starts panicking.
Yes, she paces in the shadows, rubbing her head, repeating, "You're looking at driving records. You're looking at driving records."
And the detective, standing in this dark, silent house, finally asks, "Who are you?" And from the shadows, she answers, "I'm Darlene Williams."
Wow.
The detective hadn't realized he was at Darlene's house because he had only ever seen a P.O. box or a different address in her employment files. The mistress of Tommy Swint lived exactly 1 mile away from where Niqui's car was dumped.
The lead detective explicitly wrote in his case notes that he theorized Darlene Williams drove the GMC to the apartment complex and that Tommy Swint assisted her in disposing of Niqui.
The behavioral evidence supports a deep complicity between them. I mean, right before Tommy pulled the trigger in Alabama, the final phone call he made wasn't to his wife.
No, it was to Darlene.
These Dayton connections, they operate like a corrupted hard drive. The truth, the core data, is clearly in there somewhere, but the directory pathways, the alibis, the timelines, the locations have been deliberately scrambled by multiple bad actors.
Exactly. Every thread leads back to the Meadows of Catalpa apartments. And we also have to acknowledge a bizarre coincidence in the files.
Oh, this is wild.
Exactly 1 year prior to Niqui McCown's disappearance, a young woman named Kelly D. Wilson was murdered at that exact same apartment complex. Kelly was a local DJ. Her on-air persona, Niqui.
With an I, it is an eerie parallel that just adds another layer of noise to the investigation. The files are dense with these wild diversions.
Like the anonymous letter.
Yes. 2 years into the case, investigators received an anonymous letter claiming the prison warden was having a secret affair with Niqui and orchestrated her disappearance to prevent the wedding.
And the letter wasn't signed with a name, but with the numbers 6345789.
Anyone who knows their classic soul music recognizes that as the title of a Wilson Pickett song. A song specifically about a phone number you call when you want someone to come over.
It is a deliberately constructed red herring. Someone with inside knowledge of the investigation was attempting to fracture the focus and send law enforcement chasing ghosts.
But despite all this misdirection, the most tangible physical lead in this entire 25-year saga didn't materialize until 2022.
Right, more than 2 decades later.
More than 2 decades after Niqui vanished, investigators finally secured and executed a search warrant on Darlene's property. They brought in cadaver dogs, which are specially trained to detect the scent of human remains.
And the dogs alerted on an area with dense underbrush.
Right. This wasn't directly in Darlene's manicured yard, but in a sprawling wooded lot directly behind her property.
Now, it's important to note, cadaver dogs do not smell bones. They detect the chemical byproducts of human decomposition volatile organic compounds that seep into the soil and vegetation.
And those can stick around for a long time.
Decades. These compounds could persist for decades. The dogs alerted to a scent profile in the exact geographical overlap between Darlene's home and the location where Niqui's vehicle was abandoned.
They also brought in ground-penetrating radar to map the area. How does that actually work? It's not taking an underground photograph, is it?
No, not at all. It sends electromagnetic pulses into the earth and measures the signals that bounce back. It basically looks for anomalies in soil density. If someone digs a grave and refills it, that disturbed soil is permanently less compact than the surrounding earth.
Okay, I see.
The radar detects that disruption.
But despite the dogs alerting and the radar scanning the area, no physical remains have been recovered yet. The case report ends on a truly haunting cliffhanger.
It does.
The lead investigator wrote a single frustrating sentence. This case has been suspended until further information surfaces.
It places the family in an agonizing state of limbo. When you strip away the failed polygraphs, the speeding tickets, and the corrupted timelines, you are left with the human element.
Exactly. Niqui McCown was a mother. Her daughter, Peyton, was only 9 years old when her mom never came home from doing the laundry.
And Peyton is an adult now. She has made it clear she isn't even looking for vengeance at this point. She just wants answers.
She wants a physical place to go and talk to her mother, rather than having to speak to her memory through a faded missing persons flyer.
We dissect these investigative files in these deep dives to keep the focus on the unresolved truth. This case presents a terrifying reality. Someone's entire existence, their future, their motherhood, can be violently erased and hidden within a 1-mile radius of an Ohio apartment complex, obscured by the people they interacted with every day.
It leaves you with a chilling final thought to mull over long after we close these files today. Think about the interconnected lives of fiancés, friends, and secret lovers that have successfully hidden the truth for a quarter of a century.
It really does make you wonder.
How well do you ever truly know the people closest to you, when their darkest secrets can stay buried in the underbrush for 25 years?